All right, well, let's get into it. Today's guest is Marcus Samuelsson. Listen, before I bring him in and get started, let me give you a little bit of background on why he's someone you're going to want to tune in and listen to if you don't already know who this man is. Marcus Samuelsson, he is the renowned chef behind many, many restaurants worldwide, including Red Rooster, Harlem, Street Bird at Yankee Stadium, Marcus at Bahama Fish. I mean, that's where I spent New Year's Eve. It's in Bahama and several others. He was the youngest person to receive a 3-star review from the New York Times and the guest chef for the Obama administration's first state dinner. He's won 8 James Beard Foundation Awards, starred in several hit shows, including, I'm sure this is where many of you saw him, Top Chef, but Family Style, No Passport Required, Iron Chef, I think I saw him there too as well, and more shows than, I don't know, even I've been on probably, and also hosts and produces The Seat at the Table, and also co-hosts This Moment. Through his own philanthropic initiatives, he's served over 1 million meals to people in need since the pandemic hit. Marcus also co-produces the annual Harlem Eat Up Festival, and that's in New York. And he is a New York Times best-selling author, and I am extremely excited to have him on the show today. What's up, Marcus? How you doing, brother?
DJ, I'm super happy to be here, Daymond. Thank you for having me. And, like I said, my son and I were just coming off reading your book. Congratulations to that, to share that experience. You just made it harder for all parents right now. Like now we have an example like that. So if you want to be the cool dad, that's what you got to do.
Well, it is great, and thank you, man. And it's a very warming feeling to know you bring joys to families, but you're no stranger to that. I mean, that's the whole concept of hospitality, right? Opening up your home to others and making them feel good, whether it's your bed, the ambiance, your food, your love, and I know you don't get tired of it. You wouldn't be doing it if you didn't. So, thank you so much for being here. And we are going to talk about that moment now.
Yeah.
I am often on the other side of the microphone, and very honest. People ask me about things that have happened in my life, and often we tell our stories, whether we're at a bar, meaning you don't have to be a famous person, but people, hey, where you from? And you kind of got your old da 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 da, right? And I want to find out about that moment, that critical moment in your life, but I'm going to dig much deeper into it after we get to it. Now, why don't you tell me about a moment um, that really affected your life, good, bad, or indifferent? A lot of times, the things that in the moment that affect us in a negative way at the moment is really something that fuels our passion. But can you remember a moment in your life when it just really changed your thought process or anything that you believe led you to who you are today?
Yes. Well, I think it's a great question, first of all, to go in and think about these, because we all have those pivotal moments.
Yep.
And the reason why I picked that moment for me was I was really torn between 3 different moments. And the first 2 I had very little to do with, but they were transformative. The first was we survived tuberculosis, me and my sister. And that was really my mom got us to a hospital in Ethiopia. She passed away, but my sister and I survived.
Tuberculosis, and your mother got you to the hospital, but yet she would end up passing.
Yeah. So that was a moment, obviously, that was game changing for us. But I had really, I can't recollect it. We were kids. But here's another thing that happened. I always talked about goodness of others, right? Random people that come in your life that gives you a break for no other reason than they're just good people. That nurse in the hospital that was part of saving us. Not only did she take a chance on us, she broke the law. She took us in. She had 3 kids of her own, Damon. She was a single mother, but she knew if I'm just going to put these kids on the street, they have nowhere to go. So she
took you into her home, into her family.
And set us up for adoption, right? That's another big moment, right? That's where I'm going from being in Ethiopia and then eventually being adopted to Sweden. And I think both of these moments are gigantic, they're huge, they're game changing for me. But it it was all happened between sort of 1 and 4. So I had a
Mm-hmm.
little, very little, I had very little impact on it. But
Understood.
those were the 2 moments, 3 moments I was thinking about. But I picked another moment because I was young adult. I was kind of,
Mm-hmm.
I was 20 in my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
If you asked me then, I would have been a full grown adult. But you know how it is. You're
Right,
21,
right.
22. You're still
Mm-hmm.
figuring it out. So that was my moment. That is the moment that I choose to talk to you about today.
Okay. So now you're a young adult, and in the context of what you just said, you'd already faced things that many people wouldn't. You losing your mother, your sister and survived tuberculosis, assuming that many other people in the area, the region, were not as fortunate. you you're young, you're 1 to 4, and I
Yeah.
understand that. So your friends, at that moment, it's not like you're 10. You're not maybe as attached to that, but you also are now not attached to the most. I mean, your mother, right? So now you're in a whole nother country.
Hmm.
Um, so of course you already start with a very challenging story, but let's get to the moment that you have decided to concentrate on. We all have a lot of moments in our lives, but this is the one that you think
Yeah.
that we can really dig into and get to how that created the markets of today.
Yeah. So um, at this point, I'm a young chef, but not only that, I'm doing it at the highest level and almost like an athlete. When I'm 16, 17, I'm starting to win scholarships to
Mm-hmm.
go abroad. I'm cooking in Japan at the age of 18. I'm cooking in Switzerland where people are throwing French and German and speaking at you in different languages.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not doing this by myself. I have my parents behind me, but I also have mentors that see something probably more in me than I can see in myself at that 18, 19, 20. And they're
Mm-hmm.
setting me up. And this is like the NBA, right? You are now the highest level is 3-star Michelin in France. And eventually I get a chance to work in one of those 3-star Michelin places. Again,
Mm-hmm.
my French at that point is my third language,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm doing it at this level. So I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I worked there for a year for free, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
it's, but I'm loving it, right? I find
Right.
myself, I'm successful. I'm doing it. I can master this. I now belong. So it's my contract is up. I talk to chef, and he gives you basically 15 minutes, right? So he already has the plan set out for you. Barely looks at you. He's chef. He's like, okay, Mr. Samuelsson, thank you for this great year. Go home, come back in 2 months. I'm going to set you up for another place, also 3-star, and we go from there. There's a line out the door with kids who wants this job, right? They're all
Mm-hmm.
saying, yes, chef, and just leave.
Right.
And I said, chef, I can't take the job. He's like, what do you mean? Well, I think it's time for me to start building my own restaurant. My goal is to have a restaurant like yours one day. He says,
Mm.
it's not possible. What are you talking about? He looks up, says, it's not possible. What are you talking about? He said, listen to me now. As a black kid, you can work in a restaurant because people like me allow you to work in a restaurant, but you
Mm-hmm.
can never own a restaurant as a black chef, not with the
Mm.
goals and ambitions that you have. And he said, just to clarify, do you know any black chef in France that has a restaurant like mine? And I said, I don't know all of France. I've only been to this village in Paris once.
Right. Right. Right.
And then he said, do you know anyone in Europe? I said, no, but I've only been to like 3 countries in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
including Sweden. He's like, that's your answer. So if you want the job I'm giving to you, take it, go home to your parents, call me in a week. You can think about it. I'm devastated. I have no clue.
Mm.
Like, this is like also my hero at the time, right? So I'm like,
Right.
I called my dad. He said, just come back home. Just come back home. And at that point, to save money, I take the train back home. That's 36 hours. Gives you a lot of time to think.
Right.
Right? I come back home. My dad says, do you know anyone in New York? I said, I do. Do you think you can get a job in New York? I said, absolutely. I have a really good resume. I have a good CV. There's a Swedish restaurant. I think I can get a job there. He said, good. You're going to New York. I said, why? There was a black mayor there. And if there were support.
David Dinkins.
Yep. Is that if they support a black mayor, that city will support a black-owned restaurant. That's why I came to New York City. And I think I've been fueled. And you know how we are as entrepreneurs, particularly as black entrepreneurs. We almost like athletes in a way. It's a sport. We get ready for it. We grind, we practice, but we need something that fuels us. And this story has fueled me, not in a negative way, so I'm angry at the world, but in enough chip so I can use it to sort of like, this is part of one of my whys.
Got it. So let me dig into that a little further, and I'll ask you the easier ones first that many people may know. I was unaware that at 16 and 17, young kids, and I know there are shows out there. I was unaware that there was organizations and or ways to compete where you are going around the world. And so that's something that you wanted to be part of. Did your parents put you in there initially? Like, how did you get into that? And we don't have to go deep into that. I just want to know, how did that even start, and how you get to go around the world? Just competitions?
Yeah. Well, you got to look at it as a designer, right? Where you take an apprenticeship. Cooking is a craft, just like being a fashion designer, which you come from that world. You understand the world very well. And in order to be the best, you got to work with the best. Even if you're in the corner, just sweeping the floors at the best restaurant in the world, at least they are sweeping that floor a little bit different. And we looked at these great restaurants in Europe as, the places to be, because there was craftsmanship there. There was know-how there, right? And I knew that I needed to get out of Gothenburg, which is a great city, but it's not a great city necessarily if you're an ambitious young chef, particularly looking like me.
Well, at 16, I mean, you still have to go to school. And when I think of, I happen to live actually really close to the Culinary Institute in New York, and those are college kids and or full-grown adults. Where were you getting your skill? You had to go to school, or were you kind of working? Were you having formal training, or you were working under, could be, like you said, sweeping floors, working at restaurants under brilliant people? Where were you getting your skills from?
Both, actually. So my school saw me early. I went to cooking school, but you also had to do English, Swedish, math, and all that stuff. But they knew that I was advanced and saw it. And there's like, you can do your practical hours at this restaurant, top restaurant in Gothenburg. And then so 3 days a week, I was doing restaurant work, and 2 days a week, and it flipped every other week, I was doing sort of, English, math, all of these different things. And so I had people that constantly were willing to work with the system and push me, because they saw that I had the ambition for it. And I had the guidance of my parents to say, hey, we don't know that much about food, but you need to be in around structure. So wherever I was sent, there was formative structure.
Right. So it's fascinating because at 15, 16, I had a similar program in my school that didn't teach such a great skill, a life skill, but it was called a co-op program. And every other week I can work and get credits, and my escape to get out of being dyslexic and challenged in work, challenged in school, was to go, and I happened to be a foot messenger in Manhattan. I worked at what today would be the defunct Lehman Brothers. I was a foot messenger, and I would walk up and down the block with these packages, but yet I would walk into large offices. I would see a lot of, white people, but I would also see, through the corner of my eye, a lot of professional African Americans. And it opened my eyes a little bit more to business. I got out of Queens, and I would deliver packages to large companies and organizations. But let's get into that moment. So that moment, you are a young adult. You hit to New York City. What year? David Dinkins was the mayor around 92, 93,
Yeah, I
right?
would say 89 to maybe like, yeah, like you said, 93 or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to right before you go there, you spent a year in a 3-star working under a 3-star chef. You are working for free. You got to take a train ride home 36 hours. You have zero, sounds like. You know what I like to talk about at the moment? I think that music is a soundtrack to our lives. So, I just pulled up as I was talking to you. Not sure what was cranking over in Paris those days,
Oh,
but
I know. I could tell you. I could tell you.
what song was motivating you that night? Because I'm going to go over this is just a fun fact, right? Here
Yeah.
is Billboard's top 100, but I'll go over top 10, right? I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston. Whoop, there it is.
Yeah.
Tag team. Oh, you said yep, like you already knew that, huh? Can't Help Falling in Love You before That's the Way Love Goes. Janet Jackson,
Oh, I
boy, she
love that
looks
video.
sexy on that one.
And by the way,
Freak me.
J-Lo is in that video, actually, in the back. She's in the
Yeah,
back.
she definitely is.
Yeah.
Freak Me by Silk, Weak, SWV. If I Ever Fall in Love by Shy, Dream Lover, Mariah Carey. Oh, we got another one. Kind of sexy one. We had Whoop, there it is, and now we got Rump Shaker and
Yes.
Informer by Snow. Now, you may have another song that you love, but when you're working at that restaurant for free and taking that ride 36 hours on a train, I'm sure you had taken many more rides and walked plenty of places. What was the song you recall being, whether it was a song that was empowering you or whether it was a song that was cooling you out? What was the song happening then? It may not be one of those, but just gave you a little recollection of what was going on.
Well, I want to take it even before that. Music, if you're a Black person in Europe at that point, because we didn't have internet, so finding a Black radio station or finding our culture was much harder, right? Because we didn't have
Yeah.
cable. I had cable in my house in Sweden, but here I didn't have access to videos and stuff like that. So getting CDs sent down by my friends, and I remember, just coming to the States and like listening to Dre that whole summer, because that's the summer where Dre comes out with his album and he changes,
The Chronic.
The Chronic comes out that summer, and it just changes everything. But then, everything that you just said there, right? A voice like Whitney, and Whitney got played everywhere in Europe. So Whitney, I heard a lot. Even Mariah, you heard a lot, because it's like, it's bigger than, Whitney and Mariah is bigger than music almost, right? It's just everywhere, right? Because it's more pop. It's pop and R&B combined. But the people that truly inspired me was people like Prince, Tribe Called Quest. I was fascinated by Tribe. I've never
Tribe?
heard yeah. I was like, how can these young guys put on something as sophisticated? And I loved hip hop, but Tribe was something. It's just different.
Is there a specific song that it was your go-to song when you were in Paris at what some could have felt your lowest moment? And did that song move over with you to New York?
I mean, now I'm going back, but Prince, that would be Prince. It would be everything.
What song?
I love Sign of the Times. I love that whole album, but I love Sign. I love The Cross. I just love
Let's go into Sign of the Times.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
I don't want to even start with, man, got that now you're doing Horses in June.
Yeah.
What were you thinking about? Because there was no promise of anything. You got beat down. You're going to another place that the odds are you will get beat down again. Was Sign of the Times, was you on the subway in New York City? Was it on heavy repeat? Because obviously we didn't have, you didn't walk around with a boombox. You only had your CDs. You kept going to it. Was Sign of the Times something where he talks about basically the way the world has changed and that crack and, things are happening and people are trying to, go to the moon, but they're not saving those here? Was Sign of the Times one of those things like, I'm changing with the times, or that I'm going to fight against these times and I'm going to change the time, not me?
Yeah.
I'm going to change.
I just remember being really young, and I was part of a team where we cooked for Prince, right? And I remember the moment of practicing for that, and I was selected to be part of that. Prince came to Gothenburg. I went to see the concert. I got a chance to go to the after event, and we cooked for Prince those 3-4 days he was in Gberg. I didn't lead the team. I'm just a kid, but that was a big moment. And for me, looking at Black excellence, I saw it very much in Michael and in Prince, in Basquiat, but all of those guys were older than me. The thing with early hip hop, whether it was Rakim or it was Tribe Called Quest or something like that, like Tribe was basically my age, a little bit older than me, and I just like it was so sophisticated in a way. Like I wanted to reach that level of excellence. It wasn't
Right.
only the music. When I came to New York, there was a lot of Pac played. Pac was everywhere. Biggie just started to pop. The Pac was probably if you just walked in New York at that
Your
time.
reflection on music, as I'm thinking about it, whether it is Prince, whether it's Tribe, whether it was Pac, it was very much of dig deep into what's happening and be aware of the moment
Yeah.
we're in right now. And there are various different challenges internally and externally you're gonna go against, but I'm with you and we have to do this. That's kind of the feel of all three of those artists and those songs at that time. Let me get further into that though, because you get up and leave. Did you have you're a young man. How old are you at that time?
Anywhere from like 19 to 22, 23.
That is the moment where you're a young adult and you have generally love interest.
Yeah, sure.
Was there a love interest in your life at that time when you were told no and you decided to get up and go to New York?
Yeah, absolutely. I was dating. I had serious girlfriend, but I knew that I had to break up with her to move forward with the FUBU, right? And it was a decision.
Why? Do you feel that she wasn't supportive? Do you feel like you didn't want to hinder? Is there a reason why you broke up with her? Why wouldn't you just say, hey, I'm going to go make it, and if not, I'm going to come back?
I'll tell you, there's a couple of things to this. I grew up, my parents gave me a lot of confidence leaving the house because they knew that we were the only Black family, not only in the village, but like basically in our town, right? So our parents raised us in a very specific way of people dealing with consequences. But they also knew that if we do well, you're going to get your shot, but you're not going to get 2 shots. You're not going to get 3 shots. They were very clear about, and that's, it's white parents raising 3 Black kids in a time where
your parents were white.
Yep.
No, the adopted parents were white.
My adopted parents are white.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like they had, well, this is what happened to Uncle Jonas or, Auntie so-and-so. It was only their gut instinct, right? And the information from the news and so on. But they knew you're going to get a shot because you're going to do well and you take that shot. So
how do you know the woman, as being a young man coming into your own, how do you know the woman wasn't that shot? I mean, by many accounts, meeting somebody and falling in love. You said you were serious. I don't know if you were in love or not. But how do you know that wasn't the shot? How did you, in that moment, it sounds like you didn't even think twice. You knew that you had to make certain sacrifices.
I knew that I could take care. I could do this on my own. I could not, you have to understand, I'm coming to New York. I have a job, but I don't really have a place to stay. I find a place to stay with 4 roommates. It's grimy. As a young boy in the 20s, I could deal with that. I don't want not my girlfriend, to go through that apartment, and neither would she. And it's all about this mentality of, I think it's part of being Black, but part of being immigrant, that this is the load that I can carry right now. Come back to me in 2 years. Let me get a little bit of headway here, and I can come back for you. But I knew I could not carry one more thing. This is what I could do.
So you basically did what you felt was the best for both of you. I think you had to take that shot. Did you ever go back for her?
No, but we're friends still to this day, and she had a great life,
Good.
and eventually, traveled the world, have two wonderful kids, and you know, we're still deeply friends, great friends to this day. And I think she understood that decision as hard as it was back then, and I'm still friends with her parents.
Did the 2 years, because a lot of us think that, what's the saying? You overestimate what you can accomplish in 1 year and you underestimate what you can accomplish in whatever 10 years.
Yeah.
Did the 2 years in the event that everything was good, did you make it to where you felt comfortable in 2 years when you got to New York City?
I don't think I've ever felt comfortable, and I don't know if it's a good thing to feel comfortable.
Why is that?
I think as a creative person, I constantly have to know, where do we want to go? What's past, present, future? And I think as a creative, I always think about present, but also what's coming. So, back then it was about filling the restaurant. We were lucky enough to fill the restaurant. Uh, Eventually, it was about being part of lists, making money, get some awards. We checked all of those boxes. After that, it became building my own restaurant company. But guess what? As you know, life is not linear. When 9/11 happened, it changed everything. And the only time where I kind of been closest thing to depressed is after 9/11. The weekend before that, I cooked in the towers. I knew 30 people, young cooks that passed. I've asked myself 500 times, how come I wasn't there that day? And you can ask yourself those questions. It's not healthy. But I was like, what am I doing? Like, why am I cooking for the 1% of the 1%? Like, what are you doing? And it changed my life. I would look at comfort almost as a cake with different tranches and slices. And you're absolutely right. You have to have two slices that is your comfort, which is your family, which is your loved one, and you got to be in that moment. But if there's another six slices left, as a creative, as an ambitious person, as somebody driving a team, you always got to look a little bit to your left and to your right. And I felt, for example, I was constantly in situations where I was the only Black person in the room. And when I say in the room, I mean the totality of it, from purveyors to guests to chefs. I knew that I wanted to be part of changing that, right? Did not know how, but just knew that I know so many Black chefs that are cooking. How come I don't see them in media? What is really going on here? Now, of course, we know that we come far, but back then in the early 2000s, before internet and food really hitting, the quality of food was very, very, very different. Who could cook what food and what was considered good food? And, eventually I moved to Harlem. I did not know that I would open Red Rooster right away, but that's where I started. I started Red Rooster really as a love letter to African American culture, but also for me to understand, how can we open these doors and make more opportunities for Black chefs, Black winemakers, and so on. I did not know that early 2000. I had to walk. There was a 7 to 8 year gap to understand that. None of that was comfortable. I'm Black. We share our Blackness, but guess what? You are a New Yorker, and although you grew up in Brooklyn, you were still familiar with Harlem in a way. As a Black person, as an African, I adore Harlem. We know about the Apollo and Studio Museum and even Schomburg, but I did not know how it was to live here. I did not have the same traditions. Those were all things, to go to a Black church, to know what the procedures are, to know when to jump in, when to stay out. All of those things I had to learn outside my comfort zone. But I also became a New Yorker that way, and I loved staying outside my comfort zone. I think being an immigrant is part of being outside your comfort zone, because you just don't know the rituals of that place. There were actually three Swedish Black kids. We all did different things, but we knew that New York was the place where we wanted to come to. One was Somalian Swedish, another one was Ethiopian Swedish, and the third one was Eritrean Ethiopian Swedish. We all from East Africa, grew up in Sweden, but knew that coming to New York was a better fit for us at that time. Doing different things in the creative fields, but always coming back home, sharing that story. What was the hustle for you today? What was the advantages you did? What was the stops that you got, right? And we kind of had to like, I tell you, I was just as happy as now.
It seems like you were always around the go-getter mentality, and you kept moving, right? You would you moved from, as a 15 and 16-year-old, you moved from country to country to compete, and then you were obviously you moved to France for a little while, and then you moved to America. And you stayed with three guys who are all immigrants as well. I mean, listen, everybody listening to this now, unless they are Native American, either they or their parents were immigrants, and I believe that when you come to another country, you start to appreciate, especially America, you start to appreciate what the opportunities they give you. I happen to grow up in a community where many of us were born and raised here, and if I would have four people living in the same place or five people, not all of us would end up with the same um, kind of, or be in the same journey to all want to just improve. And a lot of my friends had passed away or they're in jail.
Mm.
What kept you all as you said, you guys were talking about every hustle every night, kind of probably like how you have maybe applied for another job or you met more friends, or what kept you all there in unison? Why did anybody go, you know what, I'm going to take some of the easier routes in life. I just don't want to work that hard.
Well, working that hard was not an option. That was off the plate because we were ambitious and we were Black voices. And we knew that although America is not perfect and New York is not perfect, but we knew there was a shot for us to be heard here at some point, right? And that was our hope. I think, it's this dual existence. I remember when Rodney King happened, right?
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever been as scared watching something like that on TV, right? This happened in a modern society.
Yeah.
We were here through the 90s, through a very difficult Giuliani time, and how a lot of young Black boys, particularly, uh, really got hurt by this administration and the police task force. So this was real. This was going on. But at the same time, we felt we were also making progress as young professionals. We thought it was exciting. One of my friends, he worked at a photo studio, and one of my friends was a photographer assistant. You know what? So if they were shooting the Fugees or something like that, we came into the party not when everybody else got there. We got there at 2 a.m., but we were there, right?
Right.
We were in the mix.
Oh, you saying you got there at 2 a.m. because you were working, or you were online freezing?
Yeah, both. We were definitely not there at the 9 o'clock start, but you guess what? This is hip hop, so people were late anyway. So you know what I mean? We were right on time for us, right?
Yeah.
There was always something in the mix of going to the tunnel, or we always felt going to Nels, and like we were in it. We were kind of like the small guy in the corner in the left over there, but we were in it. And from being in a place where it was much more comfortable to being in Sweden, and we could have taken a regular jobs, but we didn't feel seen. And here we felt heard and seen. And that was like that dream of ambition, that dream and hope combined with work ethic is powerful. And that's what New York City really represents.
A lot of magical moments happen to you, and I want to make it abundantly clear that you're, as my Jewish stepfather taught me, be pro-Black but never anti anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think that we need to acknowledge that the people that adopted you were white. I think that they pushed you to be very, very pro-Black, very proactive about what you were doing in life, but that didn't change your your concept on on black-white relations. I happen to be in a biracial relationship. What would you say to people, black, white, or indifferent, listening to you right now, who see your level of success and they're like, man, this person is so successful. They've been through so much, but even at this point in his life, he's not resting on his laurels. And we should do the same. But more importantly, some people are in their careers, like many of us. What would you say to them about how you're raising your children after all you've been through? And what would you tell your children now that don't necessarily have to face those same times?
Well, I said earlier that I came out of the house with confidence because I was loved. And I was not just loved by both my parents, by my grandparents, by my uncles, my aunties, although we didn't look the same, that we were Samuelsson kids were never a doubt. So I was lucky enough to come from a super sort of loved household where there was all kinds of chaos as any family, right? We had the drunk uncle, we had the crazy auntie, but we were loved. And that gave me a sense of place and confidence that is strong, that was stronger than anything. I think that, that combination with my father, he was a geologist and he loved his job, he loved his craft. And he was the one who always said to me, find something that you're passionate about. The money will come. And when I found cooking, there was no turning back. And I'm as passionate about craftsmanship, building teams, finding new kids to teach and mentor, working with younger generation, setting up the older generation so there's be opportunities for not just myself but the next generation as well. You have to be passionate about what you do. If not, get out of the game, do something else. You can make, there's so many ways you can make money, whether that's on stock markets or whether that's, as long as you're healthy, there's so many ways you can earn a living. But for me, the passion, the craft, and we see it in front of us, right? Think about musicians that goes into the 80s, and still creating. Why is LeBron still playing? Not because he needs to check. Why is Ronaldo still playing soccer in Saudi Arabia? Yes, he gets paid a lot of money, but that's not his reason for getting up. I can guarantee you that LeBron can make a lot of money doing other things because of the love of the game. And for me, I'm deeply in love with the craftsmanship of cooking and the people in it. And if I'm not curious tomorrow, I should quit. I should quit. And I worked 30 years of my life. If I can convert that to making money, I've done something wrong. So I'm very clear on that.
We went down a great path with you. Have you ever talked or ever seen or communicated with that chef that put your life on a different path due to that special moment?
Yes. One of my chefs passed, and I went back. We took a train ride together when we opened a place in Sweden. And I said, you have to be here. And the fact that he walked in with me, we did it together. He was the first person that sent me to Europe, out in Europe. And I was almost more excited walking in with him than opening the damn place, because I felt it was really my way of saying thank you to him. This year, I went back to Switzerland. I met my chef there that I haven't seen in 25 years, 30 years. It is very important for me to be in the moment, give back, set a path for the future, but also say thank you to the people. Anyone who says I'm self-made, I always feel like, too bad for you. That's lonely. No one is self-made. So many people has been there for us and opened it up, and seeing things in myself that I wasn't even capable to see. So yes, and I enjoy those moments. And now when I see my guys that are like 15 years younger, 10 years younger than me, starting their own businesses now, I'm like, let's be there at the opening. Let's support them.
Is he still alive, that chef?
No, Chef Hugo, he passed about 8 years ago or so. But
and well, you had obviously spoken to him more.
Yeah.
Did he Did he regret what he said, or he only said that through the lens of what he had noticed? Did he say that, listen, I was only giving you, obviously, you didn't have any hard feelings. I don't have any hard feelings for my father who left when I was 10 years old. But did he reflect on that moment and kind of say, I'm glad you proved me wrong? Was it, I mean, what was the feeling of that initial kind of conversation?
I realized that he was a very, very talented chef, but very limited in his life experience. As the way we know the world today,
Yes.
he's basically traveled to Paris and back a couple of times, but then ultimately stayed in that village where he cooked. So he saw a very, very, very limited view of the world. And there was a moment in France actually when I realized that first, and I was just not quick enough to pick it up then. We were going to Paris one day, and I said to one of his guys, "What do you guys want? I'm going to be in Paris for the day. I'm going to have a couple of hours off." All they wanted was for me to go to Hard Rock Cafe and pick up a baseball hat that says Hard Rock Cafe. And in that moment, I realized, like, what? This is what you want? Because it showed how limited they were in their life experiences, right?
Yeah.
And so holding negative thoughts eats on you. It eats inside, like,
Yeah.
and to know how to channel that out and knowing that he wasn't definitely not a bad person. He
Hmm.
just was limited in his view. But it took some years to work that off, and I had to talk a lot to my parents about it. You know, it was tough.
Yeah. But I think that you brought something that a lot of us don't really consider. We're all growing every day. We learn something new. And I think there's a lot of people in our lives as we go through life and meet people that just didn't grow with you. They came from different times and places. And, we take it very personal. But if that was his only
Yeah.
understanding of the world, he can only share with you that. It doesn't mean that the man was not a brilliant chef, not
Hmm.
somebody who could tell you about the moon and the stars,
Yeah.
but you cannot know everything all the time. I have said, many times in the past, that as I reflect on, thank God social media wasn't out when I was a young man. I've
Mhm.
done very, very stupid things or non-educated things because I just had this limited view of what I knew.
Mm.
And I'm glad that you never held that against him, even though you worked through it. But as you grew as an adult, you know, you show that you can move past what other people have done and really bring them along with you. Sometimes a symbiotic relationship. So I got to tell you, man, I thank you so much for sharing. You know that moment, with us, and there was several moments in there that I will take away, and I hope our listeners will listen to your journey and understand how they can apply some of the main things that you have done or relate to it. Many of them are going through those moments right now and then apply it to themselves, man. So I really appreciate everything you're doing, everything you have done, and spending this moment with us.
I thank you, Damon. I always appreciate talking to you. I learn something new each time, and keep inspiring us, keep staying out there, because we all need shines and great. We all need great examples, something to look up to, but also something to learn from. And I think this is great that you have this podcast because it's a different moment than watching something on TV. You can just plug in and really go back and learn something. So I appreciate you, and I'll see you in Bahamas or in Miami soon.
Oh,
All right.
you'll definitely see me. All right, man.
Thank you, brother.
Congratulations on
Appreciate you.
your. Oh, by the way, before we leave, you want to promote? I mean, I want to hear about. You have so many places. I think I was in Atlanta. I was leaving
Yeah.
early, and they're like, "You're not going to Marcus's new place." Everybody's coming in from around the world from the new place. So tell me
Yeah.
really quick
Yeah.
before you go. Just
Yeah.
drop. What are your new places or
Yeah.
all your places? Really quick.
Yeah. Quick new place, Havmar, that you've been to in Chelsea, beautiful place. And
Chelsea,
then Marcus Bar
Manhattan.
and Grill in Atlanta. I'm so excited to be in Atlanta.
What's the
You,
What's the name of it in Atlanta?
Marcus Bar and Grill.
Marcus Bar and Grill. That's a pretty easy name to remember.
Yes, right? Keep it simple at old age. There you go.
All right. Thank you so much, Marcus, for being on today and sharing some of those very special moments. I mean, I've taken away a lot. It also has reinforced some of the things that I've done in the past that I remember and think about. How can I go back to that kind of power of broke mentality and apply them today? And I hope that everybody takes away all this information that you've given us because I reflect on it and I feel like I'm on a good path. So thank you very much, man. I wish you all the best, and thank you for sharing this moment with us. Thanks for watching. I wish you love and power in your life. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. Check you later.